Hello, I'm Fred Houston, and welcome to the National Training Center for Stone and Masonry Trades Stain Removal video. Have you ever had a problem with an oil stain in your driveway, maybe an olive oil stain on a granite countertop, or any other stain for that matter, whether it's coffee, tea, it doesn't really matter what the stain is. What I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to show you exactly how to remove that stain through a procedure called poulticing. Now we'll get to that a little bit later on in the video. It's a very complicated, actually it's really not too complicated. It's a fairly simple procedure that you can do at home. Very easy to do, just a little time consuming. Now the number one rule that you have to remember when it comes to stain removal, and this is a rule you don't want to forget, and that is you have to know what the stain is. If you don't know what the stain is, you take the chance or the actual danger of making that stain permanent. So you don't want to do that. How do you know what the stain is? Well, maybe you got to do a little detective work. If it's a red stain that just fell out of the refrigerator, chances are it's a tomato, ketchup, something red. If it's a blue stain on a white marble floor and it's in a corner of a lobby somewhere, I bet you anything it's probably plant food. There was probably a plant there at one time. They've removed the plant and all that plant food is spilt over. Now you have a blue stain. So use a little common sense. Use a little detective work. Now, let's say you still don't know what the stain is. And you just, what do I do, Fred? I don't know what the stain is. In this video, or actually as part of this video, we've included a little tiny manual and a stain removal chart. There is a procedure known as an unknown stain removal procedure. What it's going to basically do is it's going to guide you step by step on how to determine what the stain is by applying certain chemicals. And rather than going through the whole procedure in this video, I'm just going to let you read it. It's a very, very simple procedure because what I really want to do is I want to concentrate on how to actually take the stain out of the stone, out of the concrete. Basically anything that's porous, whether it's concrete, stone, brick, your driveway, your sidewalk. I would be very cautious, though, about using these procedures on clothing or textiles because some of the chemicals that we use can actually dye the clothing, so you don't want to do that. I would highly recommend that you always test this procedure first in a small area to make sure there's no adverse effects whatsoever. So with that said, let's go ahead and show you how to take the stain out.
Okay, here we have a red stain on this piece of granite here. And the important thing when it comes to removing stains is knowing what the stain is. So we've identified the stain. Here it's some type of a Kool-Aid or whatever. We're going to go to a stain chart. We're going to look up what chemical we need to use to actually remove it. But before we do, we want to blot the stain. Now I like using either acetone or denatured alcohol and just blot the stain. You don't want to rub it. If you rub it, you're going to spread the stain around. This is going to get the excess stain material off the top of the granite, and you can see there's no transfer, which simply means the stain is deep into the stone itself. So how do we get that stain out? We're going to use a product called a poultice, and you're going to see that here in a second. But basically what we want to do first is we want to isolate the stain, and how we do that is we take a little bit of water, we pour it on the stained area as well as the surrounding area itself. We spread it around. Now what this does is it fills the stone up with water. Remember, stone is like a sponge. And if you don't do this, when we apply the poultice, it's going to wick all the chemical away from the stained area. So we want to kind of isolate it in this particular area here. So that's why we wet it down first. Once we've done that, get it good and soaked. You can see it's dark around the perimeter here, which means it's wet. We'll take some paper towels or a rag. We'll blot up the excess water. This will get it off the surface of the stone, but obviously it's still inside the stone based on how dark it is in that particular area. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take our powdered poultice. Now this particular material is known as adipalagate clay, but it could be anything porous. It could be a diatomaceous earth. It could even be white flour. As long as it's a powder, as long as it's absorbent, and as long as it's not going to stain. Now some clays, like some of your clay material, will actually turn color if you use acids in them. So you want to stay away from those. We're going to take our chemical. In this case, we're just going to use plain water, but this could be peroxide, it could be an alkaline cleaner, it could be an acid, whatever the stain chart calls for. And by the way, the stain chart is located on the website or accompanied with this video. And just continue to mix it until you get a peanut butter, really thick peanut butter consistency. Just add more water if you need to. If you get it too wet, you can always add more poultice. So just continue to mix it. I like adding just a little bit of water at a time, kind of like making a cake or mixing a cake batter here. And just continue on until you get it into a nice nice, like I said, creamy peanut butter, thick, creamy yogurt type consistency that I need. And basically what I'll do is I like using a plastic spoon, but you could use a popsicle stick or a spatula or anything like that, is basically take it, turn it upside down, and if it doesn't fall off the spoon, in this case here, that's about the right consistency. So then what you're going to do is just take some of your poultice, apply it to the stained area itself, pack it down. Thickness is not that important, otherwise, well, I mean, if you put it on too thick, it's going to take a while to dry, so I like about 1/4 of an inch thick. Making sure you overlap it beyond the stained area by a minimum of about 1/4 of an inch. You can go further, that's not going to do any damage. Making sure it's spread out all the way around the stained area itself. And remember, this is a wet poultice, and as it dries, it's going to wick the stain material up into the poultice itself. Now, if we left it like this, it would probably dry pretty quick, within a couple of hours, and that's a little bit too long. So what we want to do is take a piece of plastic or something to cover it with. Here I'm using a piece of saran wrap. Place it over the top of the poultice itself, and then we just go ahead and tape it down. And you'll notice I'm using a blue tape, which is a low contact tape. If we use duct tape or masking tape, that might be a little bit too aggressive. It could stain the stone, as well I've seen it pull up some chips from the stone itself. After we've taped it down all the way along the perimeter, and this kind of seals it in there, so it's really not going to dry too well. So what we're going to do is take a pen and poke a couple of holes in the plastic. And what this will do is allow it to slowly dry. If we didn't cover it, it would dry too quickly. If we cover it completely, it'll dry too slowly. But by covering it and then poking some holes in it, what that basically does is allow it to dry very slowly, which is what we want. We want it to soak in to the stone and then dry. We're going to wait about 12 to 24 hours. The longer, the better. And when we come back, we're going to basically remove the tape and the plastic. Take a look. Make sure the poultice is dry. You can tell by the color here. It's fairly light in color, so we can assume that it's dry. Take a putty knife or some kind of scraper. Scrape it up. And as you'll see here in a minute, once this is all scraped up, the stain will be almost gone. And notice I said the word almost gone. Typically it's going to take more than one application to remove most stains. I have had some stains take 5 or 6 applications, and you can see here, about 90-95% of the stain is gone. Probably another 1, maybe 2 more applications, and the stain will be completely gone. And then we would go ahead and clean the stone up and then seal it properly so it won't stain again. This process is very simple. However, it can be a little tricky, meaning it's going to take knowing how to identify the stain properly and then applying the poultice. But it's a quite simple procedure.